WisconsinEye's Campaign 2024 programming is sponsored by Wisconsin Counties Association, Nicolet National Bank, Wisconsin Hospital Association, Operating Engineers Local 139, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, the Wisconsin Laborers District Council, and North Central State's Regional Council of Carpenters. To support programs like this, please consider a tax-deductible donation at wiseye.org/donate or by texting WisCI to 44321.
LaToya Bates of Mayville is the Democratic candidate in the 37th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. LaToya Bates, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for participating in this candidate interview. What is your campaign's key message? Why are you running for this office?
Well, I'm running for office really because voters deserve to be fairly represented, and we wanted to see some changes in our district. Primarily, we wanted to see some changes with the economy, where we're hoping to increase wages, to fight to bring back our unions. We want to have more housing opportunities. We want to have access to health care, which includes reproductive rights for women. And we want to give support to our small businesses, especially our farmers as well.
So if you're elected, what's an example of a bill that would be a priority for you to introduce?
Yeah, there are many areas that we are doing well, and several that we can do a little bit better in. My number one thing at this point would be to introduce legislation for a ban on assault weapons in the state of Wisconsin. There's at least 9 other states that have done this, and as a mother, as an educator, it seems very important that we are protecting our young people. We have so many school shootings, and I remember back the first time when I was a teacher having to do a mass shooter drill with a group of kindergartners, and the trauma that that puts on our kiddos, but the necessity that that still is in our community. So that would be a number one priority for me. And moving from there, we will work to economy and other issues. But it just doesn't seem right that our law enforcement is going out to protect us, risking their lives, and the average citizen can have the same level of weapons and protection that they do as well.
If you're elected, you'll be entering the Assembly during a biennial budget year, and the state is projected to have more than a $3 billion surplus. What would be your top 2 priorities for use of that surplus funding?
I think that our schools really do need our support. Rural communities tend to have slightly smaller budgets. We tend to have a less amount of people, but we still have the need to invest again in our students and communities. Somehow, as parents, we don't see monies reaching our kiddos the way that it should. There's money for administration, and there's a per student price for each student, but we want to ensure that we're investing so that our rural and other served classrooms are getting the support that they need. We want to make sure that special education is properly funded so that the families are getting the support, but also that the students that are there, in addition to rural areas, are getting the type of devices and technology that really makes a difference in classrooms. So it's great to have a surplus, and it's important that we're investing in infrastructure, education, and of course healthcare.
So you mentioned some spending priorities there for the surplus. What about taxes? Do you have tax cuts, tax reform? Is that at all a part of your platform?
Yeah, I've never paid a tax that I liked. I know that taxes are a necessity in life, but I think that we need to be very intentional with making sure that our families are not being overly taxed. We have lots of big business in Wisconsin, and they have resources to make sure that they are paying as little as possible. And we want to make sure that we are fairly taxing our larger companies, giving some incentives, tax incentives and other options for, again, our smaller farmers and our smaller businesses, and making sure that we're taking care of Wisconsin families first.
You mentioned K-12 education as a top funding priority for you. Are there things that are working well or not working so well in K-12 education that you'd like to address in the legislature?
Well, I think number one thing that's working well is our kids. They're doing their very best. They're working hard every day. They're working to meet outcomes and expectations, and they have families who are doing above and beyond. They're doing their very best and then some. We're very fortunate to have a great number of educators who are like second families to many of our kiddos. We just need to do a little bit of a better job to make sure that with all of that hard work, we're creating opportunities for our children. I mentioned funding for rural and underserved populations. Also in rural areas, there may not be some of the high school options like we see in bigger cities like Milwaukee and Madison, where kiddos in high school can have work study and then they have a great pathway onto a technical school or college. We don't have as many colleges in these areas, and we want to stop the closure of our universities and bring some more technical programs and apprenticeships to these areas as well.
So you're moving into our next question around higher ed. What do you see as the future for Wisconsin's higher education system? 4-year colleges, 2-year colleges, technical colleges. Where specifically would you think the legislature should focus?
I am a proud alum of Alverno College. I received my undergrad and one of my graduate degrees there. Also attended Cardinal Stritch University, where I received my second master's degree, and we saw Cardinal Stritch close not too long ago. And Cardinal Stritch was a thriving campus with lots of folks, lots of programs, buzzing community all the time, but sometimes we don't see some of the significant budget and financial issues that people are facing. Unfortunately, the story about my alma mater closing is not that unique. We have an obligation to help to support our schools, and sometimes that does mean funding, but sometimes that means helping them to find ways to cut costs, to cut spending and waste. We also need to do a very better job of recruiting our teachers and making sure that our K-12, but also higher education, has the best and brightest. And we have a really good pool of people here in Wisconsin, but we want to continue to do that as well.
What do you see as the state's largest workforce development challenge, and how would you propose to address it?
It's funny, I talk to workers who say that there aren't enough jobs and they're underpaid. I talk to employers who say there are not enough workers, and somehow they agree that underpaid part. We have the opportunity here to invest in infrastructure. We have renewable energy options here in Wisconsin. We talk a bit about wind. We talk a bit about decreasing our dependency on oil and foreign oil. But I think that we need to create jobs that are sustaining. It is not fair that many families, our farmers included, have to work multiple jobs just to get by. We need to increase our minimum wage. We want to see unions come back to help to protect our workers. And investing again in those infrastructures, investing in energy, will help with our agriculture. It will also help to bring in sustaining wage jobs in our state.
Another workforce question for you. Investments in public and energy infrastructure grow our state's economy. This also provides an opportunity to invest in our state's workforce, but currently there are no requirements for hiring local workers. Would you support a state resident hiring requirement for state, local, and utility scale infrastructure investments?
I would. I think that you work a little harder when you have some skin in the game. It's nice to be able to go into communities and have people who work there in the community also live there in the community. And I think we can be a little gracious, maybe a 15-mile radius around the municipality that you are working in, and statewide, of course. You should live in the state of Wisconsin or one of our near neighbors really close by, some of those border towns, but yes, I do support.
Employee classification is an issue in the construction industry. Some employers misclassify workers as independent contractors or pay them in cash off the books. This lowers costs by avoiding payroll taxes and unemployment insurance, and it puts compliant companies at a disadvantage when bidding on projects. Plus, misclassified workers may be denied minimum wage protections or overtime pay. Are you aware of this issue, and what do you think should be done about it?
Yeah, I am an entrepreneur. My family owns businesses in Wisconsin. We have staff and employees that work and live where they work at. And sometimes it's very appealing when someone says they would prefer not to be paid a payroll check. Even we run a farmer's market, and we make sure that when we're giving repayments to vendors and to performers that there is a paper trail, that we're being compliant with state laws, that we're making sure that we're doing our part to make sure that taxes are paid, because it matters. Right? It is sometimes instantly cheaper to pay people as independent contractors, but it is better for all of us if we are following that letter of the law to make sure that people are paying their taxes. Most importantly, people have unemployment insurance, and they're paying into Social Security and other programs that benefit us as a whole. And I think that matters. I find that sometimes small businesses are short-sighted and don't see the benefit of that extra step. But yes, I do support making sure that employees are classified as employees and have the protections of doing so.
Affordable rental housing is an issue in Wisconsin. Some support government-imposed rent control to maintain affordability, while others argue keeping rent artificially low will decrease rental supply, resulting in increased prices. What is your sense of housing as an issue, and which best addresses rental housing affordability, rent control or building more rentals?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I think supply and demand does have a role here. There just aren't enough housing options, and for that reason, sometimes rental prices do increase. The cost of things has increased over time. We can really work to increase the number of housing units that are available, both again in rural and also our urban environments. I met with someone a couple of months ago, and the Wisconsin Realty Association is looking to invest money in Wisconsin and building housing as well. That brings housing, that brings for folks that are looking to hire, it brings employees, because when people have good housing options and they have good job options, people are more likely to come to Wisconsin and to work here and live here. It also creates additional jobs as we are building housing. So I don't know about rent control. I think that we can do a better job of educating rental owners to see that short-term housing and having turnovers in housing is not the best for them, and it's not the best for our state, but also offering some incentives for people if they have tenants that are happy and returning and long-term, in addition to, again, providing some programs that will educate people to do a better job as landowners.
Medical systems are facing numerous headwinds in the form of inflation, workforce development, and issues around Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement, resulting in fewer services and even the closure of a hospital system in western Wisconsin. What would you do to preserve access to care and prevent future closures?
I think one important thing is if there is money in the state budget that's allocated for these expenses, to make sure that the money is allocated and reaches the hospitals. We have a lot of monies that have been earmarked for projects in Wisconsin, but somehow we've not done a very good job of getting it there in a timely fashion. Healthcare is important. Healthcare and education. If we are sick and we're not educated, how are we able to do a good job as a society? And those are places that we want to spend money.
Would you increase the Medicaid reimbursement rate to hospitals?
I think that the reimbursement rate should be increased, and I think that's something that's been on the table for a while, but we haven't seen it happen. At the end of the day, we are creating additional costs because we have emergency room visits. We have uninsured, underinsured people who become a lien and a burden on the hospitals, which is what we saw again in western Wisconsin. We can do a better job of prevention and holistic health. I worked in healthcare a good portion of my life. That preventative care is an investment that really matters, and investing in Medicare and Medicaid helps us to get that.
Mental health care is a growing concern for Wisconsinites and a concern for state and county budgets. In your district, what are you hearing on this issue, and how would you address mental health care?
I'm very happy that mental health care is no longer a negative thing. For many years, people talked about therapy as something that was just shunned and shied upon. We talk about self-care, we talk about counseling, we talk about family counseling, we talk about alcohol and drug recovery programs, but we have not really done a great job of making sure that every community has access. while most communities have some counseling and treatment programs, we have folks that come in a crisis and they have a wait list because there's not enough funding, because there's not enough practitioners, and we can do that by changing, again, I love the word incentives here today, but if we are intentionally including mental health professionals, if we're making sure when we're funding hospitals and medical centers that that includes mental health care, that includes crisis care, then we can do a much better job of serving the needs of our community, and I think those needs will continue to grow as we make it more popular for people to seek the life necessary help that they need, those lifelines.
How should Wisconsin move forward on the issue of abortion?
Well, I'm the mother of 2 perfect daughters. Being a mother has really shaped most of my life. We worked really hard to have those 2 little babies, and they mean the world to me. Those were choices that we made as a family, and I believe that every family should have the opportunity to make that choice. We talk a lot about abortion as if it's just, crazy kids having abortions, but in reality, abortion is really a basic health need. When a person becomes pregnant and there's an issue, often abortion is a life-saving treatment for them. And there's a variety of other reasons why pregnancies may not be wanted, and abortion gives an option for a family, for an individual to make decisions for themselves. So I believe that having the freedom, one of the things that I think we all can agree on, having the freedom to choose what happens in your family, what happens for your body, what happens with your health care, is one of those fundamental American rights that means so much to us. And I continue to support giving people in Wisconsin choice.
You don't see any need for limits on abortion access?
Access?
Limits in terms of a number of weeks.
I think that right now, under the protections of Roe versus Wade that we had, that was a very good, wonderful rule. I had a debate recently, and people were talking about after-birth abortions, which I do not understand how that is possible. Typically, a person realizes that they're pregnant around 6 to 8 weeks, so saying that we can't do abortions after 6 weeks doesn't make sense. But we also find that if someone's going to miscarry, it happens relatively early in the pregnancy, but there are medically induced abortions that are necessary, sometimes longer into the pregnancy. Those decisions should be left up to the person, the family, and their doctor, because again, each situation is individual and they need to make those decisions for themselves.
Transportation. What are the pressing transportation needs in your district, and how important is it that these are addressed and for the state to keep on schedule with the reconstruction of our aging interstates and significant corridors of commerce?
Transportation it's an amazing thing to me. I spend a lot of time driving over the state of Wisconsin. Oh, goodness. I saw a city bus when I was driving in here. We don't have that where I live. We have roadways that have been very fairly maintained, and I'm thankful for that infrastructure. But transportation means that we have individuals who have the opportunity to receive a driver's license, and they are able to follow the rules of the road. It means, again, things like our rural roads are safe, our city's potholes are being filled. We also talk from time to time about things like I mentioned, bus transportation and our trains as well. We have a wondrously large state, and each state has its own individual opportunities and needs. I love to see us continue to invest in infrastructure to make sure that our Wisconsin bridges and thoroughways are well maintained and safe for us to travel back and forth, especially for people like myself who spend hours a day driving throughout the state. It's very important, and again, it brings in jobs, it brings in security for us, and of course, it brings in great access to new businesses.
PFAS and other water contaminants are a concern for a growing number of Wisconsinites. Do you see this as an important issue, and how would you propose to address it?
Yes, we have been waiting for some things to move down the pipe again in our legislative arms of the state. Environment is extremely important. Quality drinking water is extremely important. We've seen throughout the U.S. folks who have had problems with contaminated water and the implications that have had on the people. Lead in water is an issue. PFAS in water is an issue. ensuring that corporations are recycling and limiting the amount of water waste and air pollution is also essential as well. And that's something that we can definitely tackle at the legislative level, and we should.
We are down to the last two questions. How would you describe the leading differences between you and your opponent?
That's a good question. Someone asks me that every once in a while. I get that question. I think that it's important to mention that I have not met the incumbent in our area. I'm told we're going to meet this Sunday at a parade at Audubon Days in Mayville. I can say that I've been working really hard to earn the vote of the people. I've been working with independents. I've been working with undecideds. I've also been talking to folks that are typically Republican in addition to Democrats to find out what is important to them, to make sure that we can make a difference, to let them know what we're fighting for and what we represent. And I hope to lead all of the people and be a voice for them as well. I am not taking for granted that I am going to be voted for just because of the party jersey that I happen to wear. And I am fighting for our farmers and for our small businesses and our families, and I don't have any allegiance to big business, and I will continue to be an independent voice for our people, representing our people.
Final question. If you're elected this fall and you receive this magic wand that you can use in the state capitol to resolve one issue in a way that brings all parties together, what would that issue be?
Honestly, that is the thing I would do. I would bring all parties together. I remember a time where we voted. It was not we voted strictly anything. We looked at the person, we looked for what they stood for, we tried to see what their values were. If their values were in line with us, that person had our ear, and we voted for the persons that we saw pushing us forward to the direction that we wanted to go in. And I would love it if we could get together as a body representing our state, regardless of party, regardless of outside interests, and really push our values, push for the people, and put all of those other politics, that negative stuff aside, and let politics really be about being a voice.
Well, LaToya Bates of Mayville is the Democratic candidate for the 37th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. LaToya Bates, thank you for talking with WisconsinEye.
Thank you.
This programming is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Thank you for watching.